welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. I have a special guest with me tonight, and would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Karl Whinnery. I'm a cinematographer. I make music videos. I just finished a movie called Jason Rising. I'm a musician. I'm in two bands, one called Whinnery, one called Ligature Marks. And despite that, I would not label myself as a creative person, which is
interesting.
I think, yeah, kind of hilarious to some people, but it's fun. Yeah, anyway, thanks for having me on.
No worries. So you can't drop that bomb and then not have me ask about it. Like, so what do you mean that you're not a creative person?
I would never label myself as one.
Okay.
I think of myself as like a little bit more like practical, if that makes sense. Like I have friends that I consider very artistic and super inventive. I view myself more as like I just work hard at things, and if I want to get something done, I have to work really hard at it. So I just put in the time, put in the effort, make things happen.
I've got a match with you. My wife is a famous singer here in Vietnam, and she's a straight up diva. She was like first winner of Vietnam Idol, and she's
wow.
An artiste, you know. I say it in the fancy way right there, an artiste, and you know she's one of those people. But we have this very you know, yin and yang type of a thing, because for me, I'm also actually not super creative. You know, if I could, I'd wear a t-shirt and jeans every single day, and I'm okay with that.
I'm wearing now.
I'm okay with that. You know, I was watching the Met Gala, and people were posting these photos, and I don't have anything against the outfits, but I was just like, I probably, if I ever got invited to that, would show up in a t-shirt and jeans. I'd probably still just do the same thing.
Yeah. But, you know, a lot of those, like, the outfits were nuts, but I think the reason they were doing that was just to make it a big splash on social media, and it worked, you know?
It works. I mean, it works.
Yeah.
But I get you what you're saying, though, because my wife, though, she looks at me and she's like, pfft. But yet, I like what you said, because I'm the same. Like, people ask me, what does a producer do? So for most of my work, for a long time, I've done a lot of producing for social media content, for companies, for actors, for bands. And I'm like, I get shit done. And how do I just, it's like one slog at a time. And I'm really good at making checklists. I'm really, really good at making a checklist. And I just go, this is our next step. This is our next step. Because, you know, and then I love bringing in people who are way more creative than me to kind of partner up with.
Yeah. But, and it's not like I can't, you know, I remember I have like little bursts too, where you just come up with like tons of ideas, and then, you know, you work on them for like the next year and a half or something like that. Like Whinnery we have 6 songs in an album and 1 writing session for music video ideas. I came up with 4 ideas for music videos, and some of them were more fleshed out than others, but we executed on all 4 of those ideas. But that's awesome. Now that we have 2 left, I'm like, I don't know what to do with them. Like we'll get there.
Yeah, right. Well, that's awesome.
Like you said, it's a checklist factor. It's, you know, it's okay. You know, I have this idea, but I can also execute it. I don't have to have. I mean, I love having a big team. If you have a good team around you, surrounding yourself, it just elevates everything. So, huge fan of that. But I also know I can just get things done myself. I don't have to rely on anyone to do it. I can, you know, put one foot in front of the other and just work through it and make crazy art that people like. We did a video last summer, and I don't mean to jump around, but we did a video last summer that had like 3 or 4 impossible tasks in it, and they were just impossible until they were done. And I don't know if you watched the Crack a Light video with Whinnery, but
I didn't see that one yet, but I will dive in.
Okay, cool. So we built a 20-foot boat, and I was telling people I wanted a boat, and I wanted to take it to the desert. And I also wanted to do a Stranger Things style like void at the end of the video. Awesome. And the boat, you know, I don't think everyone in the band was like, oh, okay, cool. The song kind of had like a little pirate vibe. But I figured filming in the ocean would be too hard. But if we take it on a desert and make it look like it's this epic journey for this epic song, then, you know, we're in a pretty good spot. And it's like really cool. And it's kind of like a weird juxtaposition. People would probably dig it. And the desert here is 400 miles away from where we live right now. So we had, you know, to take this boat 400 miles, make sure it lived. And I've never built a boat, but I was like, I think this is what I have to do. And everyone in the band was kind of like, okay, yeah, sure. And my wife was like, well, let me find you boats. I'm sure there's some busted boats you can use as like a chassis or something. I was like, no, that's not what I'm after. So one weekend I picked up my little brother. I watched like 3 YouTube videos on building boats, and I was like, well, shit. Well, thankfully this doesn't have to float. And then we went to Home Depot, and like 4 trips later, we had, I don't know, 60% of the boat built over 2 days, and then just kept working on it. And thankfully it didn't have to float, but it looked like a medievalish boat, very utilitarian. Like there's not a whole lot of flourishes. The biggest flourish was the boat had the bow of it leaned forward, and it looked kind of stealthy a little bit or something like that. But awesome. It was pretty cool. And then we had to transport it, had to get filming permits with the BLM here in Oregon, which is the Bureau of Land Management, and that was just a crazy fun process to work with them, because they're not used to doing music video permits very, very often. They're for film permits, and so it was just a fun process. And then we built a Stranger Things style void, and that was an adventure in itself too. And so it was like a little pool, maybe like that much water, 40 by 40 feet, and then we put the boat in it too. And we managed to do it, but there is, it was a crazy amount of work to make this thing happen. And we built costumes for it. But every impossible task got knocked down, and it was funny because when it was done, everybody's like, oh, wow, I didn't think this was going to happen. Like, I thought we were going to fail here, 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 and here. And I was like, no. But it was, weekly meetings with myself, Freddie Heath, who works on a lot of the projects with me, and one of the guitar players in the band. But, we managed to knock it down and take care of everything.
That's awesome. My wife, like, she always, when she gets a music video, she's like, she throws me an impossible task. And she's like, this is what I want. Do this for me. And I'm looking at it going, I have no idea how the hell I'm going to do that. But, sometimes those things actually are the things that make you grow the most. Because
totally.
They completely blow you out of your comfort zone. And then afterwards, you're like, if I hadn't have done that, I never in any way, shape, or form would have known how to pull that off.
Yeah.
And now you've got that in your bag of tricks, which is absolutely awesome.
And then sometimes you're like, well, this is really easy. I didn't know the steps to get there, or it's a little bit weird, but now I can reproduce this and do this like it's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Really interesting. That's awesome. Well, I watched Jason Rising, right?
Yeah. I
watched it, and I was really blown away by a couple of things. Like, and I wanted to pick your brain about this, because this is an area that I'm fascinated by fan films, of all of the genres, because they're so cool, and they do such respect to the original if they're done right. And you guys did that. It was really, and I watched it and I was like, dude, it wasn't just because it wasn't just the tone. It wasn't just the style. It was the camera angles. It was you really had to think carefully. Like, one of the best examples of this I've seen recently was WandaVision.
Yeah.
Did you watch it yet? Because we would sit there and we think about a TV show in terms of a story, but like, they had to think about way more than that. What was the tone? What was the underlying things that, were regular facets of the 50s? You had that laugh track. You had everyone was happy. There's all these little things that you have to consider. And when you are paying homage to an absolute classic, there are things that have to be considered. Tell me, what were some of the things that you guys thought about when you were getting into this process?
Yeah, great question. The fun thing on WandaVision, I feel like they probably had a really good kind of tone or like feel outline. And so when they were filming scenes, really, sure it wasn't all in order. They were like, okay, this is the 50s thing. Here is the more serious part. Here's this. And so they probably had pretty good consistency, but that meant, you had to plan that out ahead of time. You can't go back and retroactively do that. So I remember watching, I was like, one, I bet this is a blast. And two, holy crap, they had this prepared, because there's no wing in that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Everything. My friend is AD on some really big projects, right? and she works for the Marvel stuff and all that. And she was sending me right now. She's working in Boston on the new Ryan Reynolds Will Ferrell movie, and she posted on her Facebook about like the flow chart just for the background actors that day. And literally it was like a flow chart through from hair and makeup to holding to costumes. And it was this crazy flow chart because it was like about 60 different extras that all had to go through hair and makeup and costumes and all this. And she had this intricate flow chart. And I was like, and that was just for handling the extras. And it's like, you can't even imagine the scale of these productions. You know what I mean? That like, because WandaVision was one of the things I noticed with WandaVision too. Like, that was a big cast. That was a hefty cast for most every episode. There wasn't. That was something to think about.
Yeah, and so for us, was interesting. You know, we started filming 2 years ago. It took just over 2 years to finish the movie. We got hit by COVID. So our whole plan was to film over weekends. And then we had a delay with the script where, you know, we thought our script was in really good shape. And then you start filming and you kind of start seeing the cracks in it. And so I just hadn't been through enough revisions. And so that was one of the problems with the project. And so we paused things so we could work that out. And then we went to go kick things back up. We got 2 weekends in, and then our makeup artist who did the zombie Pamela makeup, she is amazing, and she does stuff for like Netflix's OA and like all sorts of huge things. And she got a really good contract for a show, and we're like, well, go take it. You know, we'll still be here. We'll work on other pieces. But it kind of delayed our Pam filming part. And we're like, okay, well, we'll get back together in 3 months. Not a big deal. We'll just keep working on what we have, and it will just help the rest of it be that much better. Well, then COVID hit and just shut everything down. So we had a couple good chances to work on what we'd already filmed, spot any cracks in it, and then try to work on improving it. So we had a couple times where, you know, we had to go rebuild the intensity because we wanted it to shift. So originally the intensity where things start like kind of like, oh God, they find a body and they start kind of figuring out somebody's not here, or there's somebody else is here and killing people. Like, what's going on? We tried to shift where that at. Originally it was like later in the movie. So we ended up having to refilm a few scenes, or just like get a couple extra pieces, like chunks to insert. So like you have that little rise in action happen a little bit faster. And so one of the things that we tried to do with the movie is we were trying to make it a really fast hour. There's been some other fan films that have come out where, you know, they're an hour and a half because they want a feature, but it really was a 40-minute story. And for us, we wanted to make sure that the story was the first and foremost thing that we were working, that people saw. We didn't want extra time in there just to stroke our egos or to have a full feature that's 120 minutes. We were like, no, story's going to dictate where we go. And that kind of helped inform what made it in the movie, what didn't, and how we were building it. And because we were able to edit as we were filming, because we shoot 2 days on the weekend, edit throughout the week, we were able to help kind of build that tension and have it just like skate off when we wanted it to and kind of explode versus the original version. Like it was originally a little bit slower. But it was hard shooting over the weekends, pausing for the pandemic, coming back and trying to make sure actors knew exactly where they were at in the movie. Yeah. So that got,
things like hair, and people, did someone shave? Did people cut their hair?
Yeah. And so our actors were committed for 2 years. Nobody knew this. None of us knew this. But, I think when people went into it, I don't know if anybody knew what to expect. But then once we got past the first 2 weeks and we had the first day where Jason pulls the sack off his head and like stomps over and axes somebody to death, I think everybody was like, wow, we got something. Like there were some moments on set where it felt electric. And at that point, I think everybody was like, this feels pretty special. We got something cool. And people became a lot more committed. So when we did need people to reprise their roles for more filming, they were fine. And like one of our actors, actually two of them, got other parts and said, I have to keep my look because we're still working on this other project. And thankfully the other film said, oh, okay, cool, yeah, no problem.
All right, so that's interesting. 2 years committed, and people were, a lot of people probably had day jobs and things that they had to kind of to deal with. What were some of the other major obstacles that you guys had to deal with to get this done?
So obviously the pandemic is huge. We have a cameo from somebody who was in the Friday the 13th at the end of our movie. And she is 70 and she's a complete badass. But because of her age bracket and risk, we delayed filming the ending of the movie for quite a while until we could make sure that she was vaccinated and that, COVID was a lot more known. So we had better precautions in place. But so we ended up pausing for quite a while on that portion of the filming. But we were looking at like, well, we have to get the movie done at some point. Do we wait for her? Do we not? And we really wanted to. And thankfully that ended up working out nice. But in between November of last year to the release of the movie, we had an ice storm that came in and wiped out our camp and lair. I mean, just knocked over 1 million trees in our area. And you want to look at the positive side and stuff. Our camp, we kind of reused our woods as much as we could. There's some very distinctive trees, and we kind of couldn't reuse any of our woods in that area. Well, the ice storm comes through and knocks everything down, and it's like, well, that destroyed our camp, that destroyed our lair. We rebuilt the lair, but now the woods look different. We can shoot here more, and no one will notice, which is great. So, you have to look on the bright side on that stuff. But that definitely hurt us on filming a little bit because we did have to rebuild our lair. And then we couldn't do one scene at the camp like we wanted. We had kind of wanted Adrian in the camp, but the camp got wiped out, and it's like I don't feel like spending $2,000 on cabins for one scene. We also had biblical level fires here in Oregon. So Oregon's been on fire the last 2-3 years, like kind of crazy. And where our camp is located is at a relative of the director's, and they had to evacuate last year because of the fires. Oh, wow. And then we had the smoke from all the fires that was so bad that, another day we were supposed to film, you couldn't go outside. And it was just one thing
my
after
family's
another.
In Northern California, so I understand when those fires hit, man, it's just like people don't understand. Like it's all orange. It looks like you're in like apocalyptic landscape.
Yeah, it blacked out the sky. I mean, it was nuts. So it was really brutal. And so that was pretty demoralizing because you had like three months there where you couldn't really do anything. We weren't sure if our camp's going to be there. We also weren't sure if our friend's house was going to get lost. That was pretty catastrophic for a minute. Thankfully, nothing on their property got damaged, but it got within like a mile or two of them. It was really crazy, and it looked really bad for a minute. That was, we had several people on the cast and crew catch COVID, not on set, but during that initial pause. And so, somebody got really sick, and we were hoping that, they would make it. On that note, one of the guy who was originally going to direct the movie, his name is Robert Blanche, and he's been in like movies with De Niro. He was on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He started getting sick as we were leading up to the movie, and he had a lung issue, but it turned out he had to get a transplant. So he got a lung transplant. He ended up in the hospital, and he was like, I can't direct this. I'm going to be in here for a while. So we tried to find a different director and went through a process with somebody on that, and the person ended up passing. So the writer, James, ended up directing it. He wasn't originally going to. And unfortunately, Robert passed. And this was before COVID hit. But, it was, we started off on a weird foot. And, it was one obstacle after another. But that's how any of these projects are. You run into problems. Like I do IT work for a living, and my whole job is just fixing stuff. And, when you work on film sets, it's no different. Every day there's some sort of crazy obstacle. Somebody forgot a cable, show up and like the property owner isn't quite up, they're like, I didn't know what I was signing myself up for, or, who knows what it is. Somebody shows up late with something. You're just always problem solving every time. Like the location
we had to shoot today. Yeah, we had to shoot today with my wife, and we're still in a lockdown here in Vietnam. Like the COVID situation here with the Delta slammed us, and so they just started easing restrictions. But normally when we're shooting something, I've got a team helping me out, and it's me, and just me. And it's like, and I'm running audio, I'm running cameras, I'm running lights, I'm running I'm doing everything, and then what I just have to always remind myself is you back up your backup and you back that up. You know what I mean? It's like you have all of your bases covered. I used to be roommates with this one guy who was a Navy SEAL, and was a Navy SEAL. Now he's moved into making really high-end knives. Andy Arabito, cool guy. Nice. And Yeah, look up half face blades on Instagram. But half face blades but Andy, you know, he used to always tell me these seals, they would always prepare for everything. And it's like you prepare for every eventuality. And then nothing catches you off guard.
Yep.
You know, and I love to bring that attitude to filmmaking, and especially when you are working on a large feature. You know, it's like, you know, I remember being on set of some big projects in LA. There people, it is costing, you know, over $1 million a day to run this production, and like there's no room for error. There's no room to mess up, and if you do, you will very, very quickly be replaced by someone who won't mess up. It's crazy like that, you know? But coming back to how did you get into film?
Great question. I started out in music, and I was in a band, and we did a tour, and I brought like a little horrible JVC camcorder thing, and I figured I'd document the tour. And so I'd film everything we were doing and edit and make little tour update videos, and I really enjoyed that. And then one of my wife's friends did a lot of short films and 48-hour film festivals. And so his name's Freddie Heath, and we still work together. But he, you know, I did some short films and 48-hour film festivals with Freddie and some other friends, and those were really fun. Kind of dropped out from doing that for a while, focused a lot on music. And then my band did a music video with somebody, and it was so close to being good, but it wasn't quite good. And then... Yeah, so close, but not there. And then we did another one with somebody else, so close to being good, but not quite there. And then I did one with Freddie, and it was really good, but like not quite as edgy as I had wanted. And I just like, you know, I do have a vision on a lot of this, and we're not getting to it. And I think I can do this. So I ended up buying a cheap DSLR and made a music video. And I was like, well, this is, you know, it's not great, but it's what I wanted. It's better than the other ones, at least for what I was after. And that kind of started that spark. And then after, I think 3 videos for myself, I started doing videos for other people. And, you know, had a couple of them that hit kind of big earlier. Like one has over 1 million views. And then,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I just kept going. So I've been at the music videos pretty hard since 2017. So we've done over 100. Maybe 150 or something now. I don't even keep track at this point.
That's awesome. Well, that's really cool, because it also, one of the things that you sent me the samples of your work. And one of the things, the tone of your work is really interesting. Can you tell me about the tone of a lot of your work? Just to like, what's your genre that you really fall into?
Yeah, so if somebody, will start going negative, somebody came to me and said, hey, we got this really happy song, these really happy visuals, I'd probably be like, yeah, not for me. Like, that's just not what my normal thing is. So for me, I love doing things that are a little bit like darker, a little bit more aggressive. I kind of like things that are a little bit gritty. So and that's one of the things I loved about Jason Rising was, you know, we had a chance to really spend the time, and I learned so much on the production, like how to make things look how you want. So James was amazing at aging things. So like my happy place was going to a gnarly old mausoleum that was half finished and filming things in there when it's like super wet and dripping. And, you know, that is my happy place when I'm filming. So like a junkyard, sure, let's go on a day where there's an ice storm. This is completely unique. It's horrible. And like, I'm so happy the entire time. It's like 30 degrees out. And I'm just like, hey, this is great. Freezing rain. Sure. It's not going to kill my camera. We're good. That is my thing. I like to go for the weird stuff, a little bit off the beaten path, not the happy side of the train tracks. It's going to be on the other side.
That's awesome. Now, and that's really cool, because, you know, I find that, I mean, one of the reasons that I was really interested in your work is because you see, especially with music videos, like people really skew toward like, there's a lot of people making stuff over here, but less people making stuff over here, you know? And I feel like it's fun to look at people who can look at the world in a different way. And I love how the mausoleum that's dripping rain, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, no, I don't want to shoot in there. But like, that's awesome. And visually, it's beautiful, you know?
Yep.
Because, so you know how I found you? I actually found you from an article on No Film School, because you wrote about the shooting with the black magic.
Yeah.
Now, are you shooting the Blackmagic still?
Yep.
Which one do you have? The 4K, 6K?
I have 2 of the Pocket 4Ks.
Nice.
I
I
love
have
those
a 4K
cameras.
as well. I love it.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yep.
and the 4K, what's great, I started with Nikon DSLRs, so I have a lot of Nikon glass. And then
You got
when
the
the
Micro
Pocket
Four Thirds
4Ks came
adapter.
out, yeah, it's just so nice. And so I have some a speed booster, some non-speed booster, and it just allows me to use anything. And I have like Sony cameras. I have an A6000 right now, but I own like A7 S1 and 2s, and I kind of like them, but like the Nikons look better to me, so I stuck with the Nikon.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started in Jason Rising, we did a bunch of camera tests and tried Nikons and Sonys, and I don't know, I didn't dig them as much as the original Blackmagic Pocket. And then the 4Ks came out, and I'm like, well, they look way different, but it still looks amazing, and it still looks better than the others for what we were trying to do for Jason Rising.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the feature set on them. I mean, and they just got better. Like when we first started filming, they didn't do the Bluetooth timecode sync.
Mm-hmm.
There's no timecode, whatever. And now they do that. And it's just so incredible. I mean, if I were to do this, the next movie, we're like, okay, we're going to timecode everything. And, we can throw it in Resolve and click and have it sync. I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's been the first 4 hours after filming late at night, syncing audio on all the tracks while it was still fresh in my head. Hours and hours and hours every time we filmed.
Yep. And that's what's awesome is like they have these features in there. And with the Blackmagic, so how I got into Blackmagic, I had originally started out with Panasonic. I was using the GH4, and I bought a bunch of native glass for the GH4. So I have a bunch of Micro Four Thirds glass, but it was all Olympus because the Olympus makes the nicer stuff than Panasonic did. The Olympus Pro line was great, and so when I just grab that and I throw it on the Blackmagic, and I love it. But one of the things that I liked in your article, and you kind of pointed at, and I really enjoy now, and this is a common theme that comes up again and again and again, is how prohibitive getting into making movies used to be versus how ridiculously simple, not simple, but how much easier it is now. I don't want to say ridiculously simple. That's a major oversimplification, but how much easier it is now.
Comparatively, though, I mean, it's so much easier. Now the bottleneck is, do you have good ideas, right? Because there's the lights that are out there, the cameras, the lenses. I mean, you can get a really professional look and sound pretty easily. So the bar of quality is a lot higher than it used to be. But what separates you from the pack now is going to be stories or things that are different and more inventive. So you really have to be kind of like innovating on every project that you do. Yeah. And, which is good, but it just means you got to work hard. But that's no different than it was. Like, the hard work always rises to the top, I think. Exactly. Assuming you can promote yourself properly, too. And promote the work properly.
Well, that's what I'm 100% believer in. Quantity is legit. Quality is super important, but you gotta you gotta get your numbers out there. You gotta put things out.
You have to learn. I mean, that's the reason I got to the point where I could do this was we did over 100 music videos, and you never quite know what you're getting into despite planning and preparing, and that saved our bacon on this shoot. Freddie and I shot 90. We had 4 people holding cameras on the movie at various points, and 3 of us have shot tons of music videos together, and the other guy didn't, but he's great. And it's just that ability to be super flexible and adapt. Like we had a night where one of the weapons that we were using to kill somebody broke before we got a chance to finish the kill. And you're like, wow, great. Like, what do you do now? How do you save this night? It's 2:00 in the morning. You're supposed to be over in 2 hours, and we're trying to make this work. So you just kind of have to not let those things get you and just kind of roll with it and just adapt and deal with it. And, the whole process of the movie, not every night was that bad, but like every time you film, like something goes wrong. Like you said, you have to kind of prepare and have backups for the backups and just think through everything. And when crap happens, you're just be able to deal with it way better.
I think that's one of the best analogies, and the idea of just rolling with the punches. You're not gonna, someone that I was chatting with recently brought up this idea of it was in reference to music. He was talking about how, don't try to be perfect. Perfection, if you try to be perfect, it's overrated. It's like, get it out. make it, get it done however you can. If you watch even major Hollywood movies, if you really want to start watching for continuity errors, they're everywhere.
They don't care. And that was one of the things that we shot with 2 cameras on this. So we didn't, if there was a take we liked, we could use both angles. We didn't have to worry about was your hand up or down. But there was still a couple times where, somebody's hair was over the ear or not, or something that was kind of distracting. And we're just like, you know what? We're going to roll with it. And nobody's caught it. Never seen. And there's people who flamed us online and pointed out every single flaw, and they haven't caught some of those. And I'm like, if you want to know what's wrong with the movie, I can tell you, because I've seen every part of it. But
right?
You watch Hollywood stuff all the time, and like, go for the story, focus on the story. And also, like you said, bringing back to music on that example, I have a friend who is probably one of the most talented singers I've worked with, and he does all sorts of great music. His band's awesome, but they don't put anything out recorded because he's such a perfectionist on it. And I'm like, you could have been famous if you just put stuff out. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, it just needs to be good enough. And I'm on that good enough area where I'm like, the song's good enough, it's done. And I always think, wow, it'd be nice to go back and fix it. And I never do. But like, you just get it out. Get it out. Keep working.
Get it done.
Yeah, and then you can move on to other stuff, and you don't have to have that thing hanging in your head or go back to it. And every time you learn, you'll be surprised the things that you think aren't okay resonate really well with people. And you're like, oh, and then you talk to people and you figure out what it is that stuck with them, and you're like, oh, I didn't expect that, and now I'm going to add that to my bag of tricks going forward. And yeah, you learn more by putting stuff out there and doing it and finishing it.
And I think that's something that people don't always think about, because people get so caught up in the way it's supposed to be, and especially, this is something I noticed when I lived in LA, like, especially for the film industry, like, that's not the way it's done. Well, but who cares, man? Just, and it's like, it's that establishment. I honestly feel like a lot of that is done to keep people from trying. To keep people from trying to climb the ranks. And I think it's this mentality that's propagated to kind of keep people like, there's this club, and the people that are in the club, they want to stay in the club. And the people who aren't in the club,
don't want you coming in.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want new people in the club. Man, why would I want new people in the club? Because then I might lose my place, But I think that, and this is what I love about all of these cameras and stuff, I feel like there's this revolution in filmmaking happening that, because think about it. Let's be real. I guarantee you that some of the greatest possible directors in the 40s, 50s, and 60s never made it because there was this wall of ability. Not ability. A wall of ability wasn't there. That wasn't about ability. It was a wall of accessibility. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's a game of access. Yeah. But the current thing, and a lot of people hate it because, regardless of how you feel about influencers, they've changed the game. You know what I mean? And I mean, not always for the better, but they've changed the game. And that's pretty interesting, And what's your take on kind of this change in filmmaking?
So we had 2 pros on our set who do filmmaking for a living. They do commercials. And when we first started, I don't want to say that there was resistance, but they went into it and they had a first-time director, and we'll call myself and Freddie first-time cinematographers because it was our first like real film outside of 48-hour film festivals. And we'd done some other stuff, but like they didn't know us. We're not in the Portland scene on stuff. And so there was definitely some resistance and a little bit of like condescension, and it evaporated the first time, we were loading stuff in. I hadn't shown anybody any of the stills or anything. And we had one night where we had our Jason guy just, kill somebody. And it was really awesome. And I shared some of the stills with people. I was like, hey, scope this out. This is what we got last night. And their attitude towards us evaporated almost overnight because they were like, oh, wow, like they actually know what they're doing. But, there was a before and after there. And, there was a little bit of kind of gatekeeping there. And I wonder part of it was they probably didn't know if we were, idiots or not because they hadn't really seen anything. And the, productions are interesting when they get started. It took a minute to get the crew going. And now they've been great. But I definitely feel like there's a wall there. You see it all the time with people. And like you said, there's a scene here in Portland where there's kind of a clique. You're either in it, you're not, and I'm sure a lot of people seem really nice, but I'm not a big fan of joining those little groups, and I'm also not the biggest fan of a lot of the work that they do. But they seem to think that they're great, and here we are with our little movie and just smashed everything that everybody's done in the last couple of years. And there's some exceptions, but it's. And it's interesting because I don't want to be like, oh, our thing's great and it's so much better. But, they definitely snubbed us for filming a fan film. And next thing you know, we're like sold out to Hollywood Theater here in town, which is like the theater for Portland films. So we had a premiere, sold it out. And then during the pandemic too, which is, I thought it'd be harder. And tickets just flew. And, it's just smashing views. We got Adrienne King in it, and a lot of people didn't know that. So when they saw her name attached, she has a bigger name. And you could just see those things go back to, like, jealousy. And then when I see people snipping at us in comments online, we're like, oh, yeah, the fan film. And it's like, yep, here you go with your shitty attitude, and you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, I don't understand, and there is. I was going to ask you about that. Did you guys ever feel some condescension about making a fan film?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was the first trailer we did. James and I have been friends for a while. We met through music, and he's super creative. He's got great vision. He's really good at production design, and we have a very similar aesthetic, and we work great together. And so we had been working on pre-production for Jason Rising for a while, but I would say outside of like 4 people, when we filmed the first trailer, that was the first time that most people had met each other or had any idea of kind of what we were trying to go for. And I think when people showed up and saw the props, they were like, oh, this looks good. But beforehand, they're like, oh, fan film, like Freddie, who, was here from the start to the finish of the movie and was great. And I think he was just like, oh, I don't expect much from this. It's a fan film. And like, there was a little bit of condescension even from him who's on the team, and definitely some of the actors at first were a little bit nervous, and once they started showing up and they started seeing what we were doing, they're like, oh wait, this feels really good. But outside of the group, there was definitely some people who didn't sign on because it was a fan film. We had, I'm pretty sure the director who we approached didn't sign on because it was a fan film and he didn't want to be associated with it, and now we're hitting a lot of trade. We got press. Black Magic Design reached out to me because of the movie. I never thought that would happen in a million years, but like they're reaching out to me and saying, "Oh my God, we love the movie. That's great. Let's chat." So then I've talked to Black Magic a couple times, and how cool is that? Like the camera company I use and love reached out and said we love the movie. I'm like, I don't see that happening from some of the other movies. I don't mean to gloat, but I think people were afraid to look dumb. But by doing the same thing that they've been doing and working on the same like little indie drama stuff,
people get
just
stuck
isolated
in
themselves.
A box.
Yeah.
And this is there's such an idea, and I see this in like the entire industry and music industry too, a way that things are supposed to be. And that's that, these preconceived ideas are the death of creativity. And that's like the thing too. Like, what was it? Even some of there was a Harry Potter film that the director got major acclaim, and was it I can't, Legend of the Air or something like that. And then they did one about Snape. There's another one about Snape, and
nice.
and so there was a couple there, and then people are doing but they were really, really, really good. And they were just, the idea was simply that they were set in that universe, Yeah. And I mean, if you wanted to pick hairs on some of them, sure, the acting can improve, but so can on indie films, so can on other things. You know what I mean? It's like,
I did all the VFX on our movie, and there was some of the gunshots where I wish I'd had a little bit more time to like nail them. And then I watched Breach with Bruce Willis, which is out on Amazon. And I was like, you know what? No, we're great. We're good. I have all my flaws that I was feeling bad about. I'm like, no, we're good. We have such a better movie than that movie. And they had money. They had Thomas Jane and Bruce Willis and promotional materials. I'm getting seen ads for it. And so their budget is, I don't even know what that's at. Let's guess $20 million at the minimum. Hollywood
movies these days that I don't know how they come out. And I'm I'm not saying that if I was given $1 million or 10 million or 20 million or 100 million that it costs, that I would do it right. I'm not saying it, but I am saying that there is some stuff that's made that sometimes you got to go, you have to sit there and wonder, is there not someone in the train of like a chain of command who's sitting there going, this might not be that good.
Yeah. I don't know how those things get made, especially with all the gatekeepers like we're talking about. Like, if you're going to do anything, aren't you helping the quality get better? And apparently, stuff is slipping through the cracks. So,
what was it? There was a movie that I watched. I can't remember what it was, but it was literally just like one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, and I was just like, I felt dumber after watching this movie, and I can't remember what it was, but I sat there and it gave me this entire existential crisis where I'm like, I'm talented. Why am I? These people are making things. Why am I not able to make something like that?
Yeah. And Breach by Bruce Willis
motivates me.
Is one of those,
I gotta look it up.
See how far you can make it. I mean, it doesn't get better. And that's the thing. Like, you wonder, like, oh, is it going to get better at the end? No, it doesn't. And it's just astronomically bad. So
that's awesome.
And it's every step of the way too. But they had money again. Like, somebody had money and they did it. So I don't know if like it's somebody's kid that directed and it's their first one. But even if it was a film school film, like I had to grade it, I'd be angry at the person, right? Because there's no quality control there,
right? No, that makes me wonder. Like, I think sometimes people skate through on. So this is one of my issues. And I think this is a danger and a strength that we have entered a time period where buzz is really overpowering everything. And you gotta love it. And let's reframe it in a most perfect way. Hansel, he's so hot right now.
Exactly. Zoolander nailed it.
Zoolander predicted it. Before social media really was a thing, Zoolander knew where it was going. Hansel, he's so hot right now. And I mean, I tend to feel that the industry, music, film, creative arts, has not watched Zoolander and taken the lessons that these really, really hot people could teach you. It's about that buzz.
And it's interesting because it's funny because there's some movies where, like, I was talking to a friend about the new Suicide Squad with James Gunn directing, and depending on what buzz you heard about it, depends on your opinion of the movie. I have a friend who didn't hear anything about it, watched it, and he loved it. He's like, oh, it's so good. And I'm like, it got overhyped for me because it felt like a little bit of a letdown, and it's great. And I love so much about it, but I was like, I walked away and I was like, I watched it, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything more than that to me. And I just, Stallone got buzz, and I'm like, his performance for the shark I thought sucked. Like, hand, like that it was bad. But people are like, oh,
that was a great impersonation as well.
Yeah, I'm like, you bought into the buzz. That was just, I don't know, it was weird. And I love all the actors in there. I mean, they did so much stuff right, but like, because they got overhyped, it's just.
Do you know the perfect example of this? The perfect example of this is and when buzz completely goes wrong, Brendan Fraser. Yeah. Like, the guy's making a comeback right now. And I mean, not saying that the Mummy movies were the greatest cinematic experiences ever, but the guy was solid. Outside of he was a solid thing, but the buzz kind of drifted away and he gained a little weight, and then they just were like, they shelved him,
Yeah.
And he had to work his way back through the indie circuit and try to rebuild his way up. But then, there was this thing recently where they were interviewing him, and he was like, they're like, dude, the internet's pulling for you. And he was like, started crying. He's like, I didn't change. And he's literally the nicest guy, I know. And I love the Mummy movies. I think if anybody deserves like a redemption and like a late career bloom, it's him. Huge fan. Like, he was so good in like Airheads and. Right. The Mummy movies were classics in my opinion. Like, some of the CGI might not hold up, but like, they're friggin' great. So they were what they were, and he was who he was. He was George of the Jungle. The guy, you got to give the guy credit for doing anything, and he didn't take himself seriously.
No.
You know, he was never the guy who was like, I worked on some big sets with some people, and I can tell you this: there are some people who drink their own Kool-Aid, and we'll just say it
Christian
that way.
Bale freaking out on the set of Terminator Salvation, and the thing is, like, I love him, but it's hard. I'm like, how do you reconcile somebody being that good and enjoying them, and also just kind of like freaking the hell out on somebody? Like, that's just not a normal thing.
I remember I was on set. I'm not going to name names. There was one actor that I really loved, and on this big set,
Tell me it's not Tom Cruise.
No, it's not. It's not.
Okay.
It's not that. I was working as a stand-in, and the guy's really cool, and I think he's probably still a cool person. But what he did to me was really uncool. So I was a stand-in, right? And, you know, and so I was working with the crew. I was working with lighting. And honestly, for me, it was such an awesome experience because I got to learn. I was just watching all these filmmakers work. It was so cool. But for the actors, there's this hierarchy, you know, and like this person. And so this was, you know, this guy's easy A-lister, kind of high B, low A. And I walked up, and I made friends with all the other actors, and they were just cool as guys, you know. And I walked up to get some food at Crafty. I walk up, and I'm at Crafty, and he's like there. He sees me walk up. He sees me, and I'm talking to my friends, and he looks at me, turns around, and walks away. I'm like, am I some type of virus, like that you literally have to avoid me and walk away? And it was multiple times that this happened, and I just was like. You get someone like Dwayne Johnson. Like, I actually love The Rock because of The Rock understands where he's come from and who is his fan base. You know, you watch his Facebook and Instagram, and the guy's like, you know, like rolling. He's like, all right, this is going to be great. And he drives up next to a bus of people. He's like, hey, you know where The Rock lives? And everyone's like, oh my God, you know, and that's awesome.
But I've heard stories about him from a manager back at a job where her family knew his family growing up or something. And they were always like, he's the nicest person, always has been. And this is before he blew up. I mean, he was just transitioning to acting from wrestling at that point. And they had nothing but high regards for him. And it's like, oh, that's cool. And then you watch his career just skyrocket. And I'm like, it couldn't happen to a better guy. I'm also pulling for Dave Bautista.
Right.
You know, he's different
Such
caliber.
a great actor. Let's be real. He's an actor.
Yep. Blade Runner was the one where I was like, I had
it on before we got him on our interview. I was watching Blade Runner 2049, and just that the simple way that he plays with his glasses, you know, I just was like, he takes them off, and I was like,
yeah.
I had this discussion once with this is I don't know if you know much about the world of acting, but there's this interesting split in the acting community between people who believe that an actor should be themselves in a role. Think about your Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, even Denzel. You know, Denzel is Denzel. But then there's the group that think that an actor should be someone else, you know. Think about Daniel Day-Lewis, think about Tom Hardy, you know, where they're a different person in each role. I find myself in that camp. There's a lot of people who are in this camp. But, you know, that is the epitome of what that role was all about. You know, it's just transformed into someone else.
And it's interesting. I think both approaches work. You know, there's people on both sides of the aisle that I love. And, you know, sometimes
comedy especially.
I think if you mix them, you screwed up. But if you find the right person for the role and you hire somebody because you want them in that role, I think those are, you know, if you do it right, I think they both work out great. And it's not me trying to split the difference on it. I just think that, sometimes.
You can't have Daniel Day-Lewis in every movie. That would not work. That wouldn't work. It'd be overwhelming. Or Gary Oldman. Oh, God. I love Gary Oldman. No, I want to ask you a question. If you could give advice to your younger self, what type of advice would you give yourself?
Great question. I'll use an example where on Jason Rising I learned how to do set building, and it's just something that I never thought that I could do that. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, this is great. And then now I have an idea. I can go build it. I can age it. I can do whatever I want. And that applied to the boat, that applied to building the hull of our boat and a bunch of other stuff. Like I've reused some of the wood in my yard a million times already, just built a bunch of stuff with it. And it never crossed my mind for years that you can do that. And I think it's like, be bold, be brave, and don't wait for permission. Like you don't need somebody to say, oh, you can do this. Just go do it. If you want to do it, go do it. And the more you work with different people, the more you learn, you're just going to grow so fast. And I mean, if I had my skill set now that I do when I was like my early 20s, I mean, I'd be unstoppable. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the same thing. I'm dealing with the same thing with this podcast. A lot of people are like, go slow, take it easy. You don't need to go. And I'm like, I'm booked every single day from now for a month. I went on it. And I'm like, and the idea being, you know what? I can slow down later when things take off. But I don't have time for that. And the algorithm favors regularity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so I have friends, I'm not going to name them, but like somebody who's involved in the movie that we just shot. The first time I had somebody approach me to film a movie, I said yes, even though I thought the project wasn't going to be the best. But I was like, oh, I want that experience. And my friend said, you're not ready. And I'm like, I'm not, but you're never, if you wait till you're ready,
when are you?
You'll never do it. We weren't ready when we started Jason Rising, but guess what? We did it and we finished strong and we got good fast. I mean, that was film school.
You're never ready. Do it anyway.
Yep. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. And then also with the music videos, went gangbusters and just filmed so many of them, and people were like, slow down, why are you doing so many? I'm like, you got to learn. And if you just do one a quarter or something like that, which is an approach I've seen other people do, I'm like, you don't learn enough. Like you don't do enough. You kind of get stuck in the same rut. It seems like I don't know. It's in putting yourself out there. I've had just crazy opportunities. I've worked with bands that I grew up listening to now. I mean, it's just, awesome. This wouldn't have happened if I wasn't out there and doing what I was doing at the pace I'm doing.
That's awesome. Now, let's imagine that you have Aladdin's lamp. The genie pops out. It's the Robin Williams version, obviously. And,
of course.
Gotta be. Let's imagine you got one wish. And we're not talking, of course, everyone understands, healing the world peace, of course, are things people would wish for. I'm talking about something for you. What would you wish for?
It's a great question. And it's funny because you have career, you have art and all that stuff. I think I would wish for my dogs to live forever. But if you're looking at the art side of the fence, I think it would be the ability to probably be able to do film and film related stuff and music for a living. I have a day job right now. I could probably charge more and make a living doing music videos, but I wouldn't work with the artists that I want to. And that's kind of, I'm at a weird place where, I want the Pacific Northwest to be on the map. And that was one of those things where when I started my music video business, that was the first sentence that I wrote when I kind of had a goal. And every once in a while when I go back and I try to look at that and say, why did I start doing this? When you get pissed or you get frustrated, you're working with a horrible artist. Or somebody who's difficult. I shouldn't say horrible, but I go back and I look at that. I'm like, that's right. This is what I want to do. And every time I read that, I get supercharged and energized. I want Portland to be on the map. I want it to be like the Seattle of the 90s for the grunge. I want it to be that for music now.
Look at right now. Atlanta came up, New Orleans came up. Why not Portland? It's a possibility. Yeah. But it takes enough people like yourself that are hustling to make it happen.
Yeah. And we have the artists. I don't know. I'm surprised more people haven't hit. But that said, there's been quite a few bands that have been signed that are doing some really cool stuff these days. I think a lot of it too is there's not. You don't have that one gatekeeper like MTV or something where you can have bands blow up huge in their niche and nobody outside of that niche will have ever heard of them. Yeah. So it's really interesting. We have a band right now I did a video for that they're out on tour and they're blowing up like crazy and I'm watching them blow up. I'm like, this is so good, but people in my other bands have never heard of them. So I'm like, how does that happen?
Right. Well, I really appreciate all your advice today and your thoughts. Now, if you could give the people listening one last bit of advice, what would it be tonight?
I would say stick through it. Look at Jason Rising, and that was a labor of love. It was 2 years. We thought it was going to be like a 3-month project. There were some really down points while filming and trying to get the movie across the finish line. There's down points when you're editing. There are down points trying to get it started, in fact. But, if you push through them and you work hard, there's always an upswing. If you can stick with it, you will come out of that negativity. And the other part is understanding that negativity is going to hit. And when it does hit, it feels real. But you can get through it. And when you ride that wave through it, the top is going to be that much better. And one practical example was the first time we did an assembly cut and I shared it with somebody who was on the project. I just got depressed for like 2 months because it was so bad. And I was just like, how are we going to fix this? But, you start chipping away at it. I made a 3-page list and I fixed it, watched it again with somebody else who hadn't seen it. And because having that person in the room, you see all the flaws in your movie and you're like, oh no. And so I made another 3-page list and start fixing that. And next thing you know, the list dwindles and it keeps getting smaller and smaller. And then when you have the sold out premiere at the Hollywood Theater and everyone's cheering when your actors come on screen and when somebody dies and, all the things happen, you're just like, this is the coolest moment. Like, I need to savor this and enjoy it. So that's ride awesome. The waves. Yeah. Ride the waves. It will come up on top.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight, man. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me on.